And I think that's a big point too, is like we do others a disservice when we're not open and sharing, because there's so much medicine that can be brought to others through just our vulnerable sharing of our paths and our stories. Tapping into like what should be revealed and having that like discernment requires that deep, deep level of internal intimacy and knowing like, what is my soul calling me to do? What is it calling me to share? What is appropriate to withhold right now? Is it appropriate to withhold anything? Really sitting with myself and allowing myself to feel all the things that are going on inside of me, a lot of introspection, a lot of deep internal work. And the more of that you do, the more layers you peel back from the wounds around your heart, the more you connect with that source, that infinite wellspring of love that's inside of all of us. And that's really where our love needs to be coming from first and foremost. You show up as two whole people in a relationship as opposed to like two broken people trying to fix each other and fill the gaps.
Waiting for a completion from the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Chase Dwiggins is a human potential coach who specializes in presence-based coaching and embodiment, mind-body emotional awareness, trauma processing and integration, shadow work, and meditation. Chase has studied and implemented functional nutrition and fitness as well as biohacking techniques into his own life and assists his clients in doing the same. He's a level 2 Reiki practitioner, utilizing body and energy work to harmonize the mental body with the physical, emotional, and spiritual bodies, and to facilitate the return to vibrant health. His current pursuits include breathwork facilitation training, massage and bodywork, and is a student of Gene Key's wisdom for deepening his understanding of shadow work. In his former life, Chase was a petroleum engineer and made the shift toward the field of holistic wellness after undergoing significant life transition in 2020. And now he is deeply passionate about guiding others through similar life transitions, serving as a coach and guide to help others gain access to the tools he discovered to navigate his own death and rebirth process. One of Chase's deepest core values is that every human is a being of infinite potential and the author of their own health. He says that healing is something that happens internally as we align to our true nature. The giver of healing modalities simply acts as a conduit and a mirror for each individual to reconnect with their natural state, thereby clearing the channel for their bodies and minds to heal themselves. He believes that the human mind, body, and spirit are not separate systems, but are intricately connected and are constantly seeking a state of balance and harmony, which allows us to maximize our efficiency and energy output and connect with the truth of who we are, so we can bring our unique gifts into the world. Chase believes that the first step toward healing the world is by recovering our individual, natural state of vibrant health, which allows each person to show up in the world in a more positive and productive manner, thereby contributing to the collective healing of society and the planet. This conversation I got to share with Chase is filled with depth and rich insight, and I really truly hope it serves you wherever you are on your unique path towards self-actualization. Also, just a heads up, the audio is a little low and hard to hear at times. I did my best to adjust the levels as much as I could, but please excuse the quality because I was trying out a new podcast studio with new microphones and a new audio setup, so it was all experimental for me. I hope it's not too distracting and that you can get the most out of it that you can. All right, here we go. Hi, Chase.
Hi, Sabina. Good to see you.
So good to be with you. I guess we can set a little bit of context of how we met. And so me and Chase and I met through Fit for Service. And Fit for Service is, I don't even know how to explain it. It's a wellspring, an oasis of community and soul family. There are so many synchronicities between us both. Actually, it was around this time in March, we both showed up at the open mic or talent show.
Yeah.
That was actually my birthday. I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah. Beautiful.
I was like, this is the best way to celebrate my birthday. And so I had sung a song and Chase had shared his poem.
Yeah, I think you went right after me, actually.
Oh my gosh. I remember you. Yeah, I remember that moment. And we didn't meet at that first summit,
Right.
but the universe did its magic and brought us together at the summit in Montana.
Yeah, for a circling exercise, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And there was just a resonance. I like the moment you spoke, I was like, oh, he gets it. I don't even know what he gets, but he gets it. And I just, felt really at home and just relaxed in your presence. And I remember after that summit, we just ended up connecting, I think, over Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And the synchronicities just kept popping up.
Yeah.
It felt like we were definitely supposed to stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
The more that I learn about Chase, the more that it becomes clear why. We are on a very similar path, and we've come from very different places. And I would love for Chase to share a little bit about where his own hero's journey started and what that looked like for him. In the framework of the hero's journey, before going on one's own inner exploration, they are in the ordinary world, and we have all these expectations about what we think life needs to be. And something in us, something around us, something that's holding us, shakes us awake and calls us toward something greater than what we've known and what we thought life was. I'm curious, Chase, what that looked like for you, the ordinary world, before your big exploration, and then we'll move into the arc.
Yeah, absolutely. The ordinary world, I kind of like to frame it in the terminology that Eric Godsey uses, the thrice-born consciousness. I don't know if you remember him talking about that, but again, the number 3 coming through, and this was really my first worldview, the way that I saw the world from my inception up until this kind of death that I went through. And the first me was raised in Oklahoma, always a lover. I just had this heart on my sleeve mentality throughout my life. My father traveled a lot when I was young, so my relationship with my mother was very, very strong, and the masculine influence in my life was not quite as prevalent. My father is great still in my life, provides for us very well, but he's always been very career-oriented. And so the tie with my mother became super strong and actually kind of sought to fill the gaps of the emotional connection with my father that wasn't as there as I think my inner child needed it to be. As I grew and started having affections for women, I started projecting that desire and that need onto my relationships. Just always kind of identified as this Romeo, this person who would be willing to die for like pure romance, somebody to just pour my love into and receive it in return. And that kind of is a big asterisk right there, and receive it in return, because I didn't know at that time how to find the love within myself. So my whole first 30 plus years of my life were really in this first world view of, find somebody to pour your heart out to, go through school, get a college degree, get a career, find your wife, find your one, and devote your life to it. And your career and everything else is just, it doesn't matter what you're doing because it's just a means to an end. My life focus was always that love, always that relationship. And so that's really what my early life looked like, was just building that. And I had a great childhood. I moved a little bit when I was younger. I moved to England when I was 9, lived there for 3 years. That kind of like branched me out into the world and started getting me this bug of travel and exploring and realizing that there's more outside of Oklahoma. And came back to Oklahoma and just grew up there pretty much the rest of the way. Went to college at University of Oklahoma. Met my wife there. We were married for 10 years, and we lived in Oklahoma for the first 5, and then we moved to Dominican Republic, kind of on a stretch to try and like create our own art, to create our own life. We wanted kind of the island life. We wanted to do something that wasn't just stuck in the rat race. I was in oil and gas. I studied petroleum engineering in college, so that was the first like 7 years of my career life. It was a really demanding job, 24/7. You're on call. I was a drilling engineer, so the rigs are always running. You're always getting calls in the middle of the night about something that's going on the rig, and so you're really never unplugged from that job. And it started wearing me down over time. And of course, I had to fight my own self as well within the decision to leave that job, because what I was told growing up is like, work's not supposed to be fun. Just suffer through it and provide for yourself, and that'll lead you to the life you want. The work is a means to an end. So there was something in me that didn't really believe that. I was like, no, this can't be what life is. It's just working your butt off all of your young years and then like retiring when you're not actually able to go do anything. So we wanted to go travel, and we moved to DR. Didn't really work out all that well there. We kind of went on a whim to start up a business, but it was really just an excuse to get there, and ended up drinking a lot more rum and partying there. And
how long did you live there?
We were there 6 months.
Okay.
And we got into an accident while we were there, a car accident, and that showed us the reality of the world we were living in. And our passports were taken away for a period of time, and we were like worried about whether we were actually going to be able to leave or have to go to jail within Dominican Republic. There was a lot of like kind of corruption within that whole process, and it just opened our eyes to what the world really is. It's like, it's not just this island environment where you can just have a good time. Like, you're living in a third world country also. And that experience made us realize, like, we need to get out of here. So when I started talking about coming back, my father, he was in oil and gas as well. He offered me a job to come work with him in Singapore. And that was like, perfect. We don't have to go back to Oklahoma with our tail between our legs. We can continue to travel. We had visited Singapore, and so we went over there and we lived for 3.5 years in Singapore. And I started working with my father's company. And we had a great time traveling Asia the whole time we were there. But there was something in me that knew that we were numbing things away. We had great friends. The environment in Singapore is just a food and beverage industry. It's beautiful, but the pastime there is going out and, having drinks, and incredible city. But there was part of me that knew, like, eventually we'd come back to the US, and when we came back, things were going to start getting real. And 2019, we had the most immaculate travel year of our life. We were all over the place, really experiencing the beauty of travel all over Asia and other parts of the world too. And then we moved back to Oklahoma, and it wasn't much longer after that COVID hit the U.S. and we got locked in a house together. And that's when stuff really started coming to surface, the stuff that had been brewing for a long time. Long story short, without going into the depths of that process, some truths were revealed in July of 2020. And immediately it was like, she revealed some truths about herself that was essentially like obvious that we were going to be getting divorced. Wow. And there was a period of time where we were trying to sort things out. So she revealed this truth in July, and there was about 4 or 5 months where we were trying to sort out whether we were going to stay together. But inside of myself, I knew it was over. And so the revelation of that news was the shattering. That was the wrecking ball of my first worldview. And it was like everything I'd been building toward, everything I'd been envisioning for my future, my life, my wife, my house, my dog, all of it just kind of just crumbled. And it was a very serious feeling of death. Like, there were moments when I felt like this could actually take my life. The depth of emotional pain that I was going through, I had to wake up every morning and just go to my knees and surrender, because it was so heavy and it would wake me up out of sleep. And I had this oasis in my backyard that was basically my little spot that I would just pray every morning and journal and just seek inside. And so that really is kind of the summary of my first worldview. And so the wrecking ball was the clarity that we would be ending our marriage after 10 years. And we didn't have kids. I'm grateful for that, because it would have made things a lot more challenging for sure. But it was very, very difficult. And we ended up finalizing, confirming that we were going to get divorced in December of that year before New Year's. And started going through the process. And yeah, by June of 2021, we were divorced. And really, from the moment that she revealed her truth and it started down that path was the moment that I started seeking something deeper. And there was a part of me that knew, like, I cannot numb this away. I've been numbing for a long time. And it's been that has caused this buildup inside of me to the point of like absolute eruption. It's like all the things that I was using to numb, like Netflix
I was going to ask.
and alcohol and all these different things, just completely fell away. It was through no effort of my own. There was just a part of me that knew the only answer is within you. Like you have to seek internally.
Were you always connected to that aspect of yourself that had a knowing, that had that voice coming through? Like, where were you in terms of your spiritual connection or development?
Yeah. I would definitely say that I did not have a deep ability to listen to the gentle whispers within and the intuition at that point. It was definitely there, but my ears weren't attuned to it. My upbringing was, I was raised in Church of Christ, a Christian church. And so I always had a spiritual side to me. And part of me always resonated with the message of, the Christian message of Jesus, because Jesus was all about love. And that was the message that I always got out of church. It was like, really? Okay, yeah, here's all these rules and all these things. But then Jesus came and it was like, just love each other. That's really all that matters. Everything else falls into place. So that was always the message that was with me. And I always had that connection. But I definitely, during our time in Singapore and DR before that, like I started veering away from my faith and from that connection and really just kind of immersing myself in the world of like pleasure, temporal pleasures, and travel and alcohol and those kind of things. And just kind of got lost. I remember feeling like that void in me when I was in Singapore. We sought out some churches and we're trying to get reconnected, but both of us just felt that disconnect, and we felt it from each other as well.
Peter Crone has this quote that's like, you can never have enough of what you don't need. So it's like we'll try to chase or fill or like consume, thinking that it's going to soothe us in some way.
Yeah.
But it's completely unrelated to what's actually needed.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't even have any clue of where to look.
How did you navigate from that point of like, just being lost?
The only thing I knew to do in the beginning was turn to the Bible. Like that was it at the beginning. So I started in the mornings, I would literally just like roll out of bed, go downstairs. My coffee would already be brewed. So I'd grab a cup of coffee and go into the backyard and I'd just kneel down and pray. And usually it was just like weeping and praying. And then after that moved, I would just surrender into like, okay, I'm going to open my Bible and see what verse pops out at me. And always there was something that caught my heart and drew me in. And then from that point, I would just kind of set the Bible aside and I'd start journaling. I would write that scripture at the top and then just like basically start contemplating it. And always there was just a stream that I would be taken down. It felt like I would just kind of get into this flow of writing and just be guided to some kind of epiphany or clarity.
Exactly what you needed.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I got epiphanies all the time, but like it definitely started making a significant impact. It was a consistent message of surrender that was coming through. It was always just like, you need to let go. And you may not want to let go of this, but you have to. Because if you hold your hands around it, your grip will be broken open. So one of the biggest messages that came through for me in that time, and it's still something that I use for my entire life, is just the policy of open hands. Like if something's meant for you, it'll stay. And if it needs to go, it's like a bird, it'll fly away.
Did you write about that in one of your blog posts?
Probably.
Because I was like, when you wrote that or when I heard that, I'm like, so relevant, so relevant. And then when you it's like the physical, visceral feeling of letting go is opening your palms.
Yeah.
And when you do, you can receive, you can actually absorb what is for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And the non-clinging, the non-attachment piece, it was a challenge during that period because we had, like I said, like 4 or 5 month period of like not really knowing if it's going to stick around or go. And part of me wanted to like try to make it work, you know, but then there was the other part of me that knew you have to be releasing this currently, even though it could still survive. Just be willing to let it go. And so it was like that little dance of like, you know, not pushing it away, allowing it to still be for as long as it needs to, but also not clinging to it.
And this is about your marriage.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you have people that supported you through that process, or how did you move through that transition?
Yeah, that was part of the challenge too, because of the nature of like the core and the driving force for our divorce was something that we weren't trying to blast out, you know, so we were trying to keep it kind of discreet until we figured out whether we were actually going to be able to stay together or not. So we basically assigned, like, she got one friend and I got one friend that we could talk openly to about all this stuff, and the rest of people for that period of time, we just kept it secret. And so that was a really challenging piece, is like having to wear a mask around a lot of people and pretend like everything's okay when it's very clearly not. But my best friend, Joseph, who actually passed just this past December, he was my one person, and he went through it all with me. So we had a lot of really deep conversations, and I would say that was critical to me being able to survive that time, was just having at least one person to be able to completely open my heart to and just cry, you know, and just pour out and have some perspective offered and mirroring that I couldn't see. Because when you're in that stuff, it's so hard to shift your mindset. And I would also say that cannabis was a tool that I used during that time. It was previously one of my numbing tools that I recognized. And during that time, it came to be something that I started using in a way of like helping me shift my mindset when I was stuck in a rut. And
anything used consciously can be a tool, like a productive tool and gift.
Yes.
It's like all how you're using it.
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, literally, you know, started using it with more intention of like, I just need to shift like my mindset around this topic here and like help me gain some kind of insight or clarity. And the epiphanies and the downloads that would come through just off of a little bit of a head change. Sometimes it would just be enough to create this flow of poetry to move through the pain, and it would release something inside of me. And those were really the only, I mean, between the Bible and my friend Joseph and cannabis, like those were my primary tools initially. I didn't really have access to the wellspring of tools that I've come across over the past few years in my own journey. And community was not even an aspect until like the following year. I went through the first year of this process just kind of alone in my own space. And once we confirmed that we were going to divorce in December, we, you know, started opening it up to talk to more people. So my mom became a big part of that journey as well, and some other friends. Yeah.
Would you say that this, like, the vulnerability of sharing what you're going through could also be medicine in itself, another tool, like using your voice and just being open about whatever is alive in you?
Absolutely. I think, and that's one thing I've really come to see recently over the past year or so, is the power of vulnerability and transparency. And that was one of the things that was so challenging initially, was the inability to be vulnerable and open about what I was going through, you know, with the majority of people in my life. It was just the one person.
What do you think the walls are that we have, just to dissect what this collective armor that we all carry around vulnerability, especially for the masculine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a point I was gonna probably make, is that I can only speak for myself, but you know, a lot of my walls were kind of grounded in this place of like, it's not okay as a man to show emotions. It's not okay to cry. It's not okay to speak about things that are hurting you emotionally. And breaking down those walls was, I mean, that's been the process of these past few years since that time. And they're deep, and they're really deeply ingrained. But just this idea that we have to protect ourselves. We have to, like, it's vulnerable to show our emotions. And if we show our emotions and we're transparent, that people can take advantage of us. But what I've come to realize is that vulnerability is a superpower.
Mm.
Like if you can really be open and have that heart just like pouring out, people start to resonate with that. Some people may be completely deterred by it and be like, I don't want to be around that at all, because it starts reflecting how like detached or how walled up they might be in their own
Triggers
hearts.
them.
Right.
Do you have any personal anecdotes of how you've really learned the power of vulnerability?
Yeah. And this will lead into a little bit of discussion around gene keys, but this was right before the final summit of this past year, and it was essentially the pathway of breakthrough, and I knew a breakthrough was coming. I felt it coming because
This is before Fit for Service.
No, this is jumping ahead up in like just into last year. So I mean, this is how long it took from like the end of 2020 till 2023. Basically the end of 2023 is like there was a breakthrough that happened in the October 2023 summit for me. And it happened on account of a Gene Keys study that I was doing about vulnerability. And the line from Gene Keys was, break out of misunderstanding by using vulnerability as strength. And I didn't really know what the misunderstanding piece was initially. I was like, okay, what does that mean? Like misunderstanding. But vulnerability as strength resonated with me in a big way. And the misunderstanding that I learned about was really the misunderstanding of myself, like how I'm seeing myself, how I'm presenting myself in the world, why I'm not really showing up in my fullness. And there were pieces of me that I was hiding. And one of the big pieces for me in my life was my sweaty hands and feet. And that was the download that came through. I was contemplating that line in my activation sequence study, doing the online course, and hadn't really anchored down into what it meant yet, but it had just been ruminating in my mind. Not so much ruminating, very much contemplating. That's the process of the Gene Keys. But I meditated before going to Sedona and asked the question, like, how am I supposed to be vulnerable? I felt the call to participate in that talent show in the final summit. And there was just this overwhelming flush of energy that hit me in that meditation, and my hands and feet just started pouring sweat, absolutely pouring sweat. And I got this prompt to like go drip into a jar because they were dripping. And I filled up like 2 inches of a jar within 10 minutes. And I was just like, for the first time in my life, I was not annoyed at my hands and feet. I was actually just absolutely amazed. I was like, how is this possible?
And just some context, one of Chase's, how would you say it, shadows?
Yeah.
Would be judgments around his hands and feet sweating.
Mm-hmm.
And so through this process, through him exploring and leaning into a breakthrough, he illuminated how this shadow, this almost at first would look like a curse, but is actually a superpower. And Chase also does Reiki. So it totally makes sense, like the connection of the power flowing through your hands.
Yeah, and the Reiki came about. My passion for Reiki came about after this, and because I did realize that there's something more going on with my hands and feet than just this. I viewed it as a curse. All my life it was like anytime you touch somebody, there's like a reaction, gross, ew, and especially from kids. Like kids are pretty cruel when you're growing up. And I mean, if I had my hands sitting on my pants for any extended period of time, I'd build like pools of like sweat stains on my pants, and there were times when I got called out for it throughout school and got really, really embarrassed. And that embarrassment made me kind of wall up and hide in a corner and stay in the shadows and not volunteer to give answers. And I'd never wanted to be in the spotlight, never wanted to be on stage. And it's like why going up on doing a talent show was a big edge for me, because I'm like, everybody look at me. I've never wanted to be that way. And I think I attribute it to, historically, I was just like, there was this sense of false humility that made me feel like, oh, I'm staying out of the spotlight. I'll give that to others. But no, that was my shadow of like mediocrity and victimization of just like, and that was the big shadow that got lifted, is like, I'm no longer a victim. Like these are not a curse. And So I had determined to share about my hands and feet in the upcoming talent show. Didn't get the opportunity to because they were actually allowing people to go up there who hadn't been before. And I had been at the talent show, like you said, in the first summit event. But there was part of me that knew I was still supposed to share it with a group. And so it was like later that night after the summit had ended, we were all having dinner at one of the Airbnbs. And I got the opportunity to share it with a table, about 20 people around. And it was really vulnerable for me to share it. I was scared sharing it. I was kind of like shaking and nervous about it, but I knew that my heart was telling me, like, you need to reveal this. And it was through that revelation that somebody else across the table from me reflected to me, like all the same exact things that I'd been receiving in my meditations and all of my work is like, you have to learn to love your hands and feet. They're a gift. They're not a curse. And it made perfect sense when he said it, because it just clicked with everything that I'd been receiving internally, but just kind of dismissing because I thought it was just my own head, my own thoughts. And when it aligned, it was just like this full body flush, tingles, crown tingles, like, wow, this is truth. There's something else here. And from that moment forward, my perspective on my hands and feet completely shifted. And I realized that they were meant to be used to help people. They're meant to be used to send energy and to help people heal in whatever way. But what I've recognized along this path since then is like, I'm not a healer. I'm only a vessel. I'm only a vessel that allows the source energy to move through and help others connect with that within themselves. They heal themselves. That's what it is. And that's what healing is. That's what, like, you study a lot of the healing arts. If somebody's claiming to be doing all these things, like, ooh, look at me, I'm a healer. Like there's something off there, And I went through this whole phase of like, okay, I gotta name it to claim it, and like, okay, I'm this.
Put a label on it. And
right.
Label.
Yeah. And it's like, almost like, okay, own it, don't deny this thing that's in you. But then also this sense of like, don't get ahead of yourself either, like it takes practice. It takes allowing, it takes, really opening yourself up. And everybody has this. Like, we can all access this within ourselves, but it is about an openness of heart and a true seeing of ourselves. The biggest limitation for me was I was judging myself every single day. I was hating a part of my body. And I know people go through this in so many different ways. These were my hands and my feet were like the key component of my body that I had hated all my life and tried to hide from the world. And when I finally shifted that, my voice opened as well. And like, I would never be on a podcast before, I would never be up on stage before. And now I'm feeling this internal like drive to share my story, to share my voice.
Beautiful. And I also want to pause and allow the listeners to contemplate and look inside themselves to see where is it in your own life, in your own experience, where you might be judging something that is a part of you that you're trying to get rid of, that you constantly think to yourself like, like, why is this happening? I feel like there's something wrong with me in some way. And look to where there is so much emotional charge, negative emotional charge. And to the degree that there is that resistance is the degree of potential, is the degree of love that wants to flow through. And until we make that shift of first pausing and recognizing that there is something that wants to be seen, that wants to be illuminated, until we like give ourselves permission to look without any judgment, like suspending judgment, and open up and allow a space for just pure witnessing.
Yeah.
There's another quote that's like, I didn't come here to heal you. I came here to love you, and love will heal you. And that's essentially what a healer is being a mirror for another person to witness and experience their own light and love that is already inside of them, and experience their own fullness.
Absolutely. Yeah. And something that came up while you're saying that too is like, where our greatest challenges are. That's where our breakthroughs are.
They're meant to be embraced.
Yes. They're like huge flags for us. It's like, hey, look at me. I'm causing you all of this disturbance, all of this internal turmoil.
Yeah.
Like, you shouldn't be feeling that way. I don't like to use the word should all that much, but like, it's not our natural state to be in distress, to be feeling like we're out of balance and out of harmony. If there's anything within us that's causing us to feel off, to feel, wrong in any sort of way, to feel bad, that's a sign. That's
There's
a
an
sign
innate
from our
guidance
bodies.
system. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you say that, I just knew that I had to share this, or I just knew I had to leave or do this. What is that knowing? Like, how do you specifically experience that knowing, that voice, versus like thoughts in your head that might be the one saying, like, the false humility? Like, how can you discern between the voices inside you versus knowing?
Yeah, it's part of it's just a really deepening of the ability to listen, and that's just creating a space of silence and allowing yourself to experience the emotions and the feelings that are coming up within you, and from a place of curiosity and, like you said, non-judgment. For me personally, what I've experienced is a lot of the things that I feel like I need to lean into are the things that scare me the most. And so if I feel a sense of fear and also like a little bit of excitement, like those two together, again, those two emotions are very, very closely related. I can look at the fear and be like, okay, is it actually trying to protect me from like harm? Or is there some story associated with this fear that says like, oh, you might get embarrassed. You might be impacted in some way. And to lean into like the excitement piece is what's really interesting right there, because there's part of me that feels like this energy rush through me, and like my hands will sweat and I'll get nervous about thinking about doing something. And it's usually something that is an edge for me. I'm scared of going up on stage and talking in front of people. I'm scared of revealing this truth and this vulnerability about myself. Okay, well, there's probably medicine in going up and doing that for you. So that's one of my biggest tools that I use, is like, if something like really excites me and then I also feel afraid to do it, probably best to lean into that. Not always easy, but leaning into those little fears. I wrote a poem about like the bear of fear. The bear has become a symbol of fear for me.
Yeah.
And there's the grizzly bear, and then there's the cub. And it's kind of like the shadow and the light side of fear. Fear can be this powerful guide for us. A lot of people talk about fear as like the antithesis of love, but really fear can point us toward love if we look deeply enough into it and we accept it, because everything alchemizes toward love if we go into it and if we really approach it with curiosity and presence.
What this card was saying.
Yes.
Chase pulled a card from an oracle card deck called the Journey of Love, and this card is the blood dance. And basically it's summarizing that everything, no matter how far or wherever you are in consciousness and physicality, it's all leading to the same place, which is love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I found more love in myself by leaning into the fears that have contained me most of my life.
What are you scared of?
I used to be really scared of getting up in front of people and talking, and that's going away. But I remember like times in college that I had to do presentations, in high school, even in my career, in my petroleum engineering career, in my professional life, just being so nervous about getting up in front of people and just sweating through my clothes. And it happened in my life where I had to like run out of a classroom because I was so embarrassed. Like those kinds of things stick with you in a very prominent way. And like I would notice I would have a bodily, visceral response to the thought of getting up on stage. Like my chest would start shaking. I would get short of breath. So learning to like center yourself and find your breath and just feel into that feeling of nervousness. One of the biggest things that's really like, I've only just started doing this more now, is like parenting myself, like connecting with that part of me that's scared. Like, okay, yeah, you're a little scared. Okay, let me drop in for a second and connect with that part of my inner self. And usually it's the little child who was wounded in that way, was embarrassed by his classmates. And basically just asking, like seeing him and asking him what he needs. And more often than not, he's just scared and he wants some kind of confidence and some kind of like grounded presence to say, like, you're going to be okay. Like, go do this. You got this. And just being able to acknowledge that part of myself starts to lift it. Like, I felt it even before we started here. I just like went into that place, felt that little bit of fear, loved that little kid. And it's almost like that part of yourself just was like, thank you. Like, thank you for seeing me. Now we're good, you know?
It's so relevant to like the conversation we were having right before this. And it also takes a lot of emotional mastery to hold that space for yourself, to first tune in, to actually like discern and know what is being needed, what is being asked to be seen and felt through, and then having the capacity to not react, to not judge, and then to actually give what it needs, what that part of you has been. It's like completing the cycle of a trauma that had never been completed in the way that it needed.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we get caught up in the idea of like, if our wounds come from someone in our life, you know, or some relationship in our past, that we need to go approach that person, you know, or that relationship to heal it. And I've just kind of been coming to a place of realizing like, you can do the healing within yourself, you know, without that person having to be involved. Forgiveness, compassion, a deep acknowledgement and non-judgmental seeing of yourself. And then like having the internal conversation within yourself. Some people are like, whoa, that's a little like schizophrenic kind of style. But like, no, honestly, it's recognizing that we have these different parts of us and they just need to be seen. And we can have healing conversations around our parents without our parents being involved. You can learn to parent yourself, be the father that you needed, be the mother that you needed.
Be the lover that you needed.
Exactly.
The closure comes from you.
Yeah. And I find that actually that seems to be like the first step in healing your relationship. Like if you actually want to heal a relationship in the 3D, like physical world, I want to go heal this relationship with my mother or my father. I need to do that work inside of myself first.
Absolutely.
Otherwise I show up in an energy of like, there might still be some subtle projections and blame, you know, and just not really being anchored in like, I'm confident in who I am. This is my truth. And you can really speak from a place of like centered, grounded presence and love, unconditional love, that if you're needing them to fill that void for you, then there's this lack that's in you as you approach that
There's
conversation.
So codependency. It's not true love that's being shared.
Yes. Yeah. And codependency was a big one for me. Like, because
people struggle
yeah,
in this world.
yeah, that's still a shadow that like I probably dance with a little bit, but it's definitely lifted over the past few years.
What do you think has helped you with that?
Well, processing the death of my marriage was a big one. It was literally a death for me. It wasn't just the marriage. It was like the death of that entire worldview that I held. And I developed a very codependent nature in that marriage because I was always seeking her to desire me more, you know, and I didn't feel that in our marriage. And in that seeking, I started compromising and sacrificing a lot of things that I loved, that I cared about. As I like came out of that, I looked back on that marriage a lot and just saw how much I had given up because I started reconnecting with those parts of myself and finding the joy in what I was doing.
It's like you're reclaiming aspects of your soul that weren't able to be fully accessed when you're like reaching out for someone to give you the love that is already what you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and over time too, just really sitting with myself and allowing myself to feel all the things that are going on inside of me, a lot of introspection, a lot of deep internal work. And the more of that you do, the more layers you peel back from the wounds around your heart, the more you connect with that source, that infinite wellspring of love that's inside of all of us. And that's really where our love needs to be coming from first and foremost. You show up as two whole people in a relationship as opposed to like two broken people trying to fix each other and fill the gaps.
Waiting for a completion from the other person. To kind of take a snapshot of your hero's journey arc, coming from a place of especially the catalyst that had been your marriage, the death of your marriage. What would that chapter of your life be if you could like put a title on it?
the marriage piece first, or like during the breaking down phase?
The breaking down phase.
The wrecking ball.
The wrecking ball.
Yeah. Yeah. I think yeah, it came in like a wrecking ball was like a big song at that time too, and it just felt very applicable to my life.
Resonant.
Yeah. It was like 2020 was the wrecking ball. 2021 was like gathering the rubble. And 2022 was like starting to rebuild. And now 2023 was like kind of like moving into like the new structure. There was still some like construction ongoing, but like I'm being there more. I'm living in that more. And now 2024 feels like now you're here, live it, be it. You know, you have your past, but it's just your story. Like it's part of what's brought you here. So
because the eclipse season is happening, I was listening to a podcast and she said that her name is also Sabrina, like the girl who did this. At this time, it's actually like not just the end of a chapter, but it's the end of a book. Like you said, you're ready to live a new story.
yeah. And that's honestly what I feel like the healing journey is about, at least for me, is bringing me to a place where I can serve, to live my dharma, to live what my soul is wanting me to do. The one thing it's always been wanting me to do. There was a part of me that throughout my petroleum engineering career that just always felt like I was shoving my foot into a shoe that didn't quite fit. Like I could walk around in it, but it gave me freaking like cramps and ingrown toenails and all these crazy things. Like it was brutal. Now there were parts of me that loved that career and like the success and some of the responsibilities I had and the things I learned. Like I cherish so much of it. So I don't want to seem like I'm trying to dog it, but the reality is it wasn't aligned with who I am. I was always this open-hearted like feeler, and that did not really go well in the oil and gas world. A
little contrasted.
Yeah, very male bravado, like, you know, kind of dominated industry. And to be like heart-centered and open and vulnerable was something I kind of had to hide. I felt like I would don a mask when I would, you know, show up on a rig site or a location, and I would just have to like put on the mask, step out of my truck,
It's tiring.
go work, come back in. I'm like, oh, I can take off the mask and like put on my podcasts and listen to the things that like nourish me.
So what is your soul asking you to do now, or calling for you to do?
It's pretty big, but like the summary of it would be, I want to help others access the truth of themselves. I want to provide a platform and an avenue for everybody to discover and access all these different tools and modalities for clearing away the trauma, for moving through huge life transitions, for getting yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually fit, and really becoming the whole part, like the wholeness of what we're meant to be. And a lot of times the catalyst for that is some kind of life tragedy, you know, so a lot of it is the healing journey from these tragedies. Or it can be something that's been with you all your life and some kind of like prolonged trauma. Trauma represents itself in every type of way. So helping others heal from their trauma through all forms and modalities. I'm a coach. I'm going to do breathwork training actually this week in Austin, which I'm really stoked about. Breathwork has become a massive practice for me in like releasing somatic tension and tying into the emotional wounds, and if you can feel it in your body and feel it release. And I've worked with a variety of modalities, like so many that I'm just like, okay, I have this big belt now. Like, how do I present this in a way that it is available to the masses affordably, so they don't got to go spend thousands of dollars on retreats, you know? And most people, I mean, like, I think about where I was when I started out on this journey. I didn't know these tools. I didn't have access to them. I didn't even know what breathwork was. Most people I've talked to about it since like I've started getting into it have no idea what it is.
I forget how like it's just a different world, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately it is, I want to help as many people as possible. I'm doing one-to-one coaching, but like the part of me really wants to be able to also reach larger groups of people, and creating something, a platform online as well as a physical space that incorporates all the various healing modalities, and it's not just me, like this is a collective effort. I want to bring in experts in every one of the fields and have people who, you know, if I'm not the right coach for somebody, I'm not going to keep coaching you. I want to say like, this is something like, we're not necessarily aligned here. You know, there's another coach over here that I'm familiar with, like might actually be a better fit for you. So having a pool of resources to where people can like come and be like, okay, yeah, that coach seems like it's aligned with this. Here's a practice that I feel called to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you're saying you're having that bigger vision to hold, to create space for a larger community, to have resources accessible to them.
Yeah.
Through coaching, breath work, different healing modalities.
Yeah. And I want to hit all levels, you know, but I also realize it's like master of none, essentially. Like mastery, and the word mastery almost insinuates that you're gonna like be the utmost expert at something, but really I think mastery comes down to like, can you learn it enough and embody it enough in your own lifestyle to where you can teach? And then it's like, put that in your belt and move on. And that's really where I've been over these past few years. It's like this
that perspective,
constant drive to learn new modalities. And it's not through like, I got this, I need to go learn something else. It's just like, I feel a passionate stirring about this. Okay, I'm going to explore this. Wow, it's really powerful. And like, I'm applying it to my own life and feeling the impact. The biggest thing is embodiment. Like, I want to embody the practices that I'm helping others with.
I was just thinking this, like to like become the practice, essentially.
Yeah, and just be it. And through that being, that ripples out. You don't have to push. And you can't push people along their own journey. If you think somebody could benefit from breath work and they're not open to it, you're wasting good luck. Both parties' time. Yeah. So it's just really showing up and doing this stuff and letting your energy draw others in. And if they start to get curious about what you're doing, I mean, a lot of that's going to come through sharing the voice, you know. So a big thing that's been coming through for me is share your voice, share your story. Telling the story of our journeys, I think, cannot be overstated, the power that has. And there was a big imposter syndrome for me initially of like sharing my story, because there's all these thoughts of like, who the hell are you? Like, what have you been through? Look at all these other people who have been through way worse, you know. And comparison is the thief of joy. Comparison with anybody else's stories is like completely irrelevant, because everybody's worst experience is their relative worst experience. Like, it's the most traumatic thing that they've been through, you know. So it doesn't really matter what it is. It's how you process it internally and what it does to your internal world. It can completely rock you and shake you out of like what you thought was your stable life. And when that happens, it seems like this widespread of tools are just tools that can apply to dang near everybody. It's just, you got to find what fits for you.
Absolutely. Go on your own hero's journey. Try it on.
Yeah.
And your message is your medicine.
Yes, absolutely.
You never know. Sometimes you'll never know like whose life you're going to touch, but as long as you're sharing, you know, you're doing your part.
You know, there's some of this that's got to be done alone. It needs to be done in the workings of your own soul and your own quiet space, but there is so much power in community too. So at the right time along your journey, finding that community, finding that space of people who can reflect to you things that you're not able to see about yourself. Because that's where a lot of my shadows have been revealed.
Same.
And it's through the reflections of others.
We need that. We need each other. It's both and.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're reaching the end of the hour. If you have a little more time to squeeze, what would you say is the holy grail that you've received from your hero's journey? Your medicine.
There's so many nuggets. For me, I think it's going back to vulnerability and transparency.
Powerful.
And this is actually my gene key of purpose. At the very bottom of my hologenetic profile is the shadow of dishonesty. And the gift level above that is intimacy. And the city level is transparency. So intimacy is literally like how clearly can you see yourself? It's not so much about intimacy with other people. It starts inside of yourself. And dishonesty is a very elusive shadow, because we can be really dishonest with ourselves without even knowing it, you know, about what we want and about what's best for us. And we can compromise our own like true desires to do something that makes somebody else feel good. And that can be good, but it can also steer us away slowly and subtly. Vulnerability as a superpower is something that I'm really leaning into, and writing that way, speaking that way, tapping into any time that I feel like an internal resistance towards sharing something and be like, okay, why is that resistance there? Does that need to be voiced? And how can I voice it in a way that doesn't step on people's toes too? Because a lot of times we withhold little truths so that we don't offend. And if we can just tap into like, okay, what's honest and true here? And there is a temperance that we use. So we don't just like blast truth bombs out all over the place. And like, you can just like almost like vomit that on people. And sometimes it's not appropriate.
Because you want it to be received.
Yeah. So I think tapping into like what should be revealed and having that like discernment requires that deep, deep level of internal intimacy and knowing like, what is my soul calling me to do? What is it calling me to share? What is appropriate to withhold right now? Is it appropriate to withhold anything?
I definitely feel that embodied in your energy, just like literally whenever we talk and just being in your presence, I feel that gift just shining through. And it's so refreshing and it's so impressive. And I just really appreciate you seeing yourself and doing the work and sharing your voice, sharing so vulnerably online. Like, it really is a wellspring of wisdom, your blog posts and your content. And I can't wait for you to share more because it's like, it truly is so nourishing.
Thank you.
I see so much of myself that I wouldn't otherwise have seen if you didn't share what you share.
And I think that's a big point too, is like we do others a disservice when we're not open and sharing because there's so much medicine that can be brought to others through just our vulnerable sharing of our paths and our stories. I'm by no means perfect in this. I still catch myself in little flares of dishonesty, but I'm drawing much more attention to it now. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it's an ever growing process. You're never all the way there. The journey is the destination. Like we're on this path and I'm still walking it myself. So as a coach, as anybody who's trying to help others along their healing journey, along their hero's journey, just got to know that like nobody's perfect. And if they're acting like they're perfect and they got it all figured out, we need to look a little closer. That's a pretty big red flag.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chase. This was like a gift for me. And I know it's going to be a gift for every single soul that this touches and lands on. And I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. It was such an honor to be here with you, Sabrina.
So beautiful. All right. I will link all of Chase's links and where you can find him. And if there's anything else you want to leave the listeners with?
No, I love you all. I don't even know most of you, but I love you all. And
you will soon.
yeah, I'm just so excited to continue this journey and see what this year has to unfold because this is going to be a big year.
Amen. A new book.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Peace out, everyone. You want to pick a card?
Yeah. Definitely.
It's an oracle card. So this is the journey of love. This has followed me since I moved to California. But you can pick.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yes. It'll be for us and every being who listens. And
That one called to me. The Blood Dance.
ooh. I think this one's about community. What number is it?
42.
Do you want to read it? You can read out loud.
Sure. The heart craves life and the blood responds. In relationship to each other, life happens. The desire and the action, the movement of cycles, drawing in and letting go, rushing to the center and pushing far away to the extremities. It is the cycle of relationship, dancing between self and other, into oneness and into individuality. So it is with human beings in relationship with each other, and with human beings and the divine essence. Sometimes the heart of God feels so close, it's as though our own inner passion is the very blood rushing through it. Then we journey far, bringing our nourishment to where it is needed, to those who are cold and lonely, to the farthest reaches of our own dark self, that we may, if very brave, dare to love completely. Though we can be lonely for the warmth of the center then, craving that feeling of being at home, soon enough, we are called back to the core of the divine heart, and the cycle continues. Remember that you are always in this dance of life. You are never apart from the divine. It is just that sometimes in our natural flow, it is easier to feel that divine presence than other times. Yet you are always the blood connected to the heart. This oracle brings you confirmation that you are connected to the divine source, to all that is. If you are experiencing a phase of feeling cut off from yourself, from your body, from another, or from the divine, even from your own feelings, spiritual connection, or intuition, be reassured that this is temporary and part of the cycle of life itself. Soon all connection shall return with even greater warmth and nourishment, welcoming you home again with great love. If you feel you have been journeying in life and fear that you have lost your way, do not trouble yourself, precious soul. You are never far from the divine heart and will always be called home. Love's language speaks like sound of falling leaves, caressing wind to bear aroma sweet. You ask if I can love and measure true, and give emotions weight the scales do. Each tear releases more than words can say, expressing all my heart wants to convey. Dang. That was beautiful. That idea of like sometimes the heart of God feeling so close, and then like we have to journey far and bring our nourishment to like those who are cold and lonely. That's been such a powerful cycle for me lately. It's just like that's kind of like the dance of like being out here and like connecting the soul tribe and all that, and then like going back home and being around family and like bringing it all back in to like the people I grew up around and who don't see me in this way, you know?
Oh my God, this is the hero's journey.
Right? That's what it feels like.
Because you go through all that to return with a gift to give the community.
Yeah.
Like you have to venture off on your own path. Let's start.
Wow, I love it.